Hey team, welcome to episode 4 of Jeans and a Nice Top podcast. I can't believe we're on episode 4 already. I feel like the time has absolutely flown by and I've loved every second of it. Thank you so much to everyone that has tuned in so far and is loving it and is giving me feedback. It means the absolute world when you rate, review and subscribe. Anywho, enough of me. This week we are joined by the inspirational powerhouse that is Soraya Beheshti. If you have not heard her name yet, I am sure you will. She is seriously making waves within the educational consultancy movement. She is a vegan anthropologist who is so selfless and has devoted so much of her time to the refugee movement, which we delve deeper into, discussing how to be a better ally and make a positive impact, even when it can feel so far removed from your own environment. I know that privilege and circumstance really do make a difference, and we can leverage our own in order to make a positive impact, which is the main message I'm really taking away and giving to you guys from this episode. I definitely felt more inspired as well to be more confident in the workplace, especially as a young female, which is something that Soraya does very well and isn't afraid to stand her sacred ground, which I'm 100% for. And on a more lighter note, we discuss the importance of a gap year, because if you know me, all I talk about is when I went to Asia. It's just a big part of me. It's a part of the brand. I'm all for people doing things in an unconventional way and truly delving deep into self-exploration. But I hope you leave this episode feeling inspired and motivated to make a difference, even if it is only in your small little corner of the world, your little microcosm, because everyone has an impact and everyone can make a positive impact. And I think 2020 more than ever has taught us how important that is. And don't forget to rate, review and subscribe. Oh, and follow me on Instagram at Smile to Health and at Jeans and a Nice Top Pod. Ciao! Hey team, and welcome to another episode of Jeans and a Nice Top, and today I am blessed with the marvellous Soraya Beheshti. She is the Regional Director of Crimson Education, a vegan anthropologist, Head of Sustainable Development of the 1 Billion Project, and she's just an all-round embodiment of true altruism and has an innate selflessness for the concern and well-being of others. I've known Soraya in a lot of different ways. We're Instagram friends through and through from the beginning of the app days, really. But to see her grow and develop into this absolute female badass that is really paving change for women, especially those that are in disadvantaged areas, is just incredible to witness and an honour to be in her presence of, to be honest. So, but I'm going to stop being cringy now and I'm going to let her introduce herself. And for those that don't know you, tell us a bit about who you are, what you do. Who's the amazing Soraya?
I don't know, but I'll tell you who I am. So my name is Soraya. I'm half New Zealander, half Iranian. So I guess the story starts there. A collaboration between New Zealand and Iran that had me being born in the UAE.
Yeah, and it's such a beautiful combination of cultures as well.
Yeah, I think there's probably very few of us in the world.
So
Iran, New Zealand, I studied in the US. I went to Columbia, and I really discovered my passion for anthropology, something that in high school I actually probably wouldn't have been able to describe. I didn't really know what it was. But been a long time vegan, going on 10 years. Which is obviously the community through which we know each other.
Yeah, blimey, as if it's been 10 years as well, because that must be pretty much the same for me. You forget, don't you? It just becomes a normal thing.
Now it's like, I've been vegan almost as long as I've not been vegan. So like in a few years it will be longer, which is weird to think about. But I guess aside from the stuff that you mentioned, I'm passionate about education. And in my time at university, I did a lot of work with refugees, conducted sustainability research in the Atlantic rainforest in Brazil. One of my highlights, one of my favorite experiences.
So incredible.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to carve a dent in some of the issues that I see around me, and I really like the promises that technology in particular can have in solving some of these big problems. And so my refugee work was a lot involved in like emerging technologies like blockchain, and now obviously with sustainable development as well, using technology is a big part of that.
I think it's so nice to hear about how positive technology can be, because I think we're always told about how technology is ruining the world and it's brainwashing us and, you know, destroying our children's futures, but actually to see the positive side of such progression and evolution really is a real positive to see.
Yeah, and I think like you know, like we talked about the vegan community, and I kind of wanted to move away from that whole Instagram community because it was so extreme in some ways. Not in the veganism, because like I'm very extreme in my belief on that, but like
there's no half and half.
Puritanism and stuff. But in technology discourse, I definitely see that people are either really apocalyptic about it, or people are really, really just like pro technology, not questioning anything. And I think like all the things you mentioned are true. Like technology, especially social media, is really toxic, but it also enables you and me to have this conversation, and it enables things in education that have never been possible for people living in like remote parts of the world, and so forth.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with technology is human connection, isn't it? I know definitely during the lockdown specifically, especially when we couldn't be around vulnerable people like our grandparents and stuff like that. I don't know what I'd have done without FaceTime, Zoom, WhatsApp, all of that stuff that we take for granted on the daily. Although I do not want to do another Zoom quiz. I don't want to do one again. But like you said, things like this enabling us to connect, because you're in Dubai at the moment, right?
Yes, I'm in Dubai. I was actually just in Paris for a couple of weeks.
I've only been to Paris once, and it's actually coming up to like my year-versary of being there, but it's such a beautiful city. Wow.
Yeah, it's really gorgeous. It was nice for me. It's like Dubai is Dubai is nice for a lot of reasons. I mean, my professional life is here, but you miss having a high street. We don't have a high street here. You miss like the little things, like being able to bike in a forest, or just like go for a walk and I don't know, pop into a cafe here or there, rather than, you know, going to like a restaurant in a mall.
I've never actually been to Dubai, but I know that it's very modern and it almost feels futuristic in what I've seen of it. You've got the two contrasts, haven't you? You've got the city, which is very upbuilt and progressive and high tech and clean, and then you've got the deserts, which feel very kind of movie like and exciting, and like, but also barren and unknown.
Yeah, it is like that, and it's like it's a real popular place for like influencers and stuff. It's kind of like living in a hotel where, you know, sometimes like when you go to a hotel, you're super, super excited, like it's so nice to have, you know, everything done for you, but you don't like necessarily want to stay in a hotel for like your whole life, you know. You at some point want to have your own place. So that's kind of how Dubai is feeling to me at the moment. But I do love it for many reasons. It's really international and it's really good Indian food.
We love it. I love it. Yeah, that's one of the actual biggest bonding things of me and my boyfriend have, is really good Indian food. We went for like a really good curry on one of our first dates, and I think that he just won me over.
Oh, nice. Yeah. What's your favourite?
Oh, so there's a place called Tiffin Tin in London, and they have a really expansive vegan veggie menu, and they do a side dish that's got okra in it, and I don't know the specifics, but hot damn, that stuff is so good. And I think is it aloo gobi, which is potatoes and cauliflower. Love that stuff. Love it.
If you come to Dubai, I'll take you for a dosa, a South Indian lentil crepe.
I think I've seen a couple of them on your Instagram, like when you've been, and
they're massive. I have the big one.
Oh, I'm such a foodie, so that's one of my favorite things about traveling, actually, is the food.
There's a lot of good stuff in Dubai to eat. I'll definitely give it that. But I ate pretty well in Paris too. I loved like going to the bakery in the morning and buying fresh bread and like lettuce from the farmer. It's delicious.
Yeah, it feels really, I feel like Emily, I don't know if you've watched Emily in Paris on Netflix. It's that kind, it is that kind of romanticized vibe whenever I go. I can't wait to go back. I want to go again.
Yeah, do it. All seasons. It's beautiful.
But speaking of lockdown, I'm asking everyone at the moment what you're currently watching and what you're currently reading. Everyone I follow is always I love a book recommendation. I'm such a book nerd. Also, I'm getting into series now. I never used to, but I'm really into like crime and police documentaries. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
I've heard that from a few people recently.
It's so bad. It's so addictive, but I think it's because I love to understand the psyche of people's minds. So I think I'm going to say that's where I'm going with it, and not that I'm crazy. But what are you currently watching? What are you currently reading?
A lot is my answer to both those things. I don't think I've ever watched so much TV, but also like TV series never used to be so good, did they?
Yeah.
Netflix is making
they've hooked us in bad.
Yeah. So what am I watching? I was madly obsessed with Peaky Blinders at the beginning of lockdown. I just love it, but I finished it.
Funny fact, that is about half an hour from where I live, like where it's based. Yeah, so Birmingham is like half an hour east of me because I'm west of Birmingham. Yeah, so I don't really have a thick accent, but if I got one of my parents in, you'd be able to hear it.
I'm all right with accents. I think I can do that one. I think I could do it. So Peaky Blinders, I'm loving it. I'm just like so curious to see if Tommy's. I should probably not spoil anything.
How sad. Well, spoiler alert, don't listen to the next 15 seconds.
If Tommy's dead. Okay, end of the spoiler alert. I recently started The Crown. I love it. It's pretty good too. And Arsène Lupin. If you like crime, this is the show. It's a French TV show. And there's just one season out, and it's based on a French kind of mythology or classic tale about this like gentleman thief. And it's kind of a modern take on it, and it's just like so brilliant. There's so many plot twists that you just can't see coming. So I really, really recommend it.
Oh, I love that. I love it when you don't know where the narrative's going, when it takes a complete... My current watch is Line of Duty, because they're releasing a new series, and it's about police corruption within the police force and AC-12 that investigate the police force. But it's so funny because you go through the whole thing being like, he's definitely guilty, it's this person, and then the plot twist, you're just like, what? I didn't, help! I didn't see that coming. So, yeah.
Exactly.
So,
yeah, Lupin is like that. It's really, really good. So I highly recommend that one. And then what am I reading? So I actually just started a Bookstagram recently because I'm so into books. I like Russian literature a lot, so I'm reading Dostoevsky's short stories at the moment. But I read a really interesting book recently, which is kind of like outside my usual style, but I thoroughly enjoyed it, called My Year of Rest and Relaxation.
Oh, tell me more.
It's an Iranian writer. I guess she studied at Columbia as well, lives in New York, and she writes about this girl who just it's from the point of view of the girl, and she just decides she's had enough and she's clocking out of life, and she just takes sleeping pills for a year. And then you go through her mental journey of clocking out of life for a year. It's really, it's really engaging, and funny, even though it's a pretty grave story.
Yeah, it sounds dark, but actually, imagine if you could switch off from the world from a year. What would you actually do?
Yeah, she just sleeps. She sleeps the whole year. So highly recommend it. My Year of Rest and Relaxation. I heard there's a movie that's being discussed, and I heard Margot Robbie is being discussed as the main actress.
Ooh, to be fair, I do love Margot Robbie. I know she's cliche, but I just love her. I think she's fabulous. She is a good...
She's always in good stuff too. I, Tonya was excellent. Wolf of Street. So yeah, those are the two most recent books. And then I really have a soft spot also for books that take place during the Chinese Cultural Revolution. So I recently read something called Red Azalea, which is this crazy story of a girl who grows up during the Cultural Revolution and then sees an opportunity and takes it. I won't say more than that.
Oh, I think I'll add that to my list because I'm the same in that I love something on quite a dynamic backdrop of something that's going on in society and seeing how different people react to that. I find really interesting.
Yeah, really strong female characters.
Yeah, we love them. We love a protagonist. I love a female protagonist. Speaking of female protagonists, you're definitely one in your own life because when you were at Columbia, you founded a non-profit startup.
Yes.
Do you want to tell? So I know it's in blockchain, which was created. So it's based around financial tech for refugees, as far as I'm aware. I'm not super clued up in the tech world, but I'd love you to tell me more about. I mean, you not only were you at university in a country that you weren't born in, that you didn't know anyone, and doing a degree that's challenging enough, but you then start a non-profit organization. That is sensational. So wow, just tell me more. I'm in awe of you, girl.
Thanks. So this was the time was 2016.
Throwback.
Yeah, exactly. I was taking a program which was a study abroad program that took place in Jordan and then in Paris, and I was studying Arabic and migration, displacement and diaspora, so really looking at the refugee kind of context, in the refugee context, Paris 2016, right in the heart of it, and studying that and kind of root causes and so forth in the best way you can in such a short period of time. And so after the program, I'd been living with a Palestinian refugee family in Jordan and a Moroccan family in Paris.
Oh, wow.
And this family was living in an area that was kind of close to where all the refugees like the homeless refugees were staying. So after that program ended, I just decided to stay. So it was summer, and I decided this was like something that I really wanted to. I mean, it sounds cliche, but I really wanted to just like help in any way I can. I wanted to lend my hand in any way I can. There were a lot of like children. So for these parents who were living there, they were homeless. I found it ironic because a lot of them were from Afghanistan and Sudan, and they were living under a station called Stalingrad. So it was a piece of irony that never left me. And you would see even little things like parents who are there with their children, trying to protect them, and then are so deep into that parental protective role that they probably would appreciate some time just to like, you know, be adults and kind of hang out with their friends and so on. So just like taking the kids out for an ice cream was something that allowed the parents then to take care of whatever they need to do. So I was doing a bit of that, bringing food. There was a lot of tear gassing going on. Even amongst the children, it was quite shocking. And so my dad's a documentary filmmaker, and I always had my camera on me. That was kind of a lesson that he told me. You never know when you'll see a story that really
there's always a moment.
So I have all this footage from that time, and I was interviewing people trying to understand, you know, their journeys, and a lot of them were trying to get to England. So I decided to go to England and interview refugees who'd made it across. And this is kind of the beginning of, you know, what I later realized was actually like, you know, research, but at the time I was just trying to collect stories for my own interest.
And you were just trying to help and understand, because I think a lot from the media's perspective anyway, we get a very one-sided perspective. We don't actually get to understand, I think, what a lot of people, there's a lot of prejudice around the whole refugee plight, and people can't understand that circumstance because of their own privilege. And actually people need to take into consideration, why would they put themselves and their families and their children in such grave danger to risk their actual death? They are risking death to get somewhere where they think they will be safe.
And it's like, it's a horrible experience to be a refugee. I think probably there are some people who, I don't know, twist stories and stuff, but like I think most people, it's just like not worth it unless your situation at home is so bad. It's not worth to spend 2 or 3 years living like homeless, walking across Europe and so on. So I interviewed those who got to London, and then, you know, it was obvious that all of them were coming from the jungle in Calais, so-called the jungle. For anyone listening, I have air quotes. And so I decided to go there, and I didn't know anyone there, but there was a lot of reliance on like Facebook groups at that time. So I just posted in the groups, and someone connected me with someone who connected me with someone who connected me with this lady who was like this OG amazing French woman working in the camps for ages. Volunteering her home. I mean, just like spending her whole life helping these people to avoid harm, get medical treatment and stuff. She picked me up from the train station, and that was kind of it. So I met a lot of really interesting people, and you know, made some good friendships there. People who are now living in England, who I still talk to regularly. And I realized that one of the problems was that there were a lot of refugees working in the camps, like volunteering, because there's no official administration of the Calais refugee camps. There's like no electricity, nothing official. It's all volunteer run. So they were allowed to volunteer, but they weren't allowed to get money because they don't have like tax identification numbers, but they were allowed to be paid in like food rations and stuff. So I realized, you know, there's this kind of weird gap where these people are, you know, sometimes refugees for 3 or 4 years. They're not allowed to earn an income, and yet they have a desire to work. They often don't have much else to do, and they really want to be useful. Like psychologically, you want to feel,
you need a purpose to keep the motivation to keep going forward, especially when, you know, you're in a place that is foreign to you, that you don't understand. You want to be able to recreate and make a new life for yourself, and you can't if the world won't let you be part of society.
No one wants to feel useless. So I wanted to figure out a way we could create like an alternative economy to supplement the monetary economy. So a kind of point system, but, you know, within the current system, you could be like, let's say a refugee from Afghanistan, you could maybe work for 20 hours and be able to afford 1 hour with a good lawyer who could help you with your situation. So this was like clearly the problem. People's time is valued differently. So my idea was to create a blockchain token, which would allow people to exchange services, exchange time, and it would be at a completely equal value. So the basis was a recognition that all humans have like innate dignity and innate value, and it has nothing to do with like what situation you are in. So if you were a refugee from Syria, you have skills. You could teach Arabic, you could teach a musical instrument, Syrian dancing, art classes, poetry, calligraphy, and you could also use the points that you accrue to buy like help. Maybe it's CV writing help, or internship training, or legal assistance. So that was the idea.
I think that, well, I'm just in awe because I think that's so progressive, but it's like shocking that you have to do that in order to benefit them. But also, I mean, how old were you when you were doing this?
20 some, wow, 20.
So you were 20 years old, and you have created a system that enables people a better quality of life.
Well, it was a long kind of road, and it's quite difficult technology, and obviously we're entirely volunteer based, and like it's hard to get investment when you're a non-profit because you can't give equity. So we created a product, but I really wasn't happy with it. And then I've actually kind of put some of it on, I've kind of put the tech side on hold because we didn't have the resources. I wrote a cookbook, which is all vegan recipes from refugee homes, like from Syria, Sudan, Palestine, Iraq. And it should be coming out this year, and that will help us raise some money to actually build it properly. So
amazing. And that's such a good idea as well, to bring in elements of their culture and their actual skills and talents that we wouldn't be exposed to, and then make it accessible to the Western world, in inverted commas.
Yeah, and food is like such an important thing. In fact, one of the refugees that I met in Calais, his name was Mohammed, and he broke his leg while trying to get to the UK, and then was kind of immobile because they don't have proper access to medical care and stuff. And he learned to cook in the camp using like the very limited ingredients they had, and he started to make these really like famous within the camp recipes. And when he got to England, he actually started a pop-up once a month. It's called Mo's Eggs. They have lots of vegan options too. And it became like hugely popular. The Guardian covered it. They were getting like selling out every month, and his hope is to open a restaurant. So I highly recommend anyone to check it out. But yeah, food is just one of those things, and especially like Middle Eastern food, for instance, is designed to be shared.
Yeah, it unifies people. It's a universal language, isn't it? That's what I think is so powerful about it.
Yeah, you don't have like an individual plate. You have like your mezze, your hummus, and your baba ghanoush, and all these other things, and you share.
I love that, and it brings people together. That's so powerful. And what was the restaurant or pop-up called again?
Mo's Eggs. So on Instagram it's MOS_eggs, EGGS. And then you can just look it up. It's just amazing, and the whole team who runs it are people from Calais, and they're just like amazing people. And I see the industriousness of this community. They're all people who have gone and done amazing things, and they've really tried to make the most of what they have. And I think like, how could we not want those people in our communities?
Yeah, to add, and they're trying to add in a way that they can, and despite being in a situation that tries to stop them from every angle, so to speak. I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, they inspire me a lot.
Right. I really am interested in the moment at like allyship, especially with everything going on in the world at the moment. I don't know if you saw yesterday about the hate crime that's going on against the Asian community with the people killed in Atlanta. There's like a 300% increase in Asian hate crime in the UK at the moment. And as somebody that is, I would say, quite an active ally, what would be your advice for people wanting to help but not really understanding how to? I feel like it's a catch-22, isn't it? Because it's difficult to help and also not get in the way, if that makes sense.
So yeah, I think that's a really good point, because I know when I was younger, I think we all, when we're younger, have a little bit of a savior complex, and we want to be the savior or the person. Yeah, the savior, exactly. Mm-hmm. And so it's important, I think, to let others speak, and that's what I saw really nicely done during the Black Lives Matter moment, and everyone was kind of making space for Black voices.
To be part of the conversation, but to know when that conversation is yours to be had. So like you said, it's about holding space for the people whose voices aren't heard, and knowing that you can comment on the situation, but from an external perspective rather than acting as if it's your own circumstance.
Yeah. Look, I've always been someone who, and this is just me, and I don't think it's I don't think there is a right way, but I've always been someone who's been more interested in I probably wouldn't post about all these things on my story just because I know other people are going to be doing it.
Yeah.
And I'm more of a person who likes to, I don't know, be involved in like actions.
Yeah.
But I do think there's a place for people who are posting, because that's certainly how I know about these things, is from like
100%.
But I think, look, there's so many people online and on social media that like, I don't even know if we necessarily need to be the ones like hailing the cry, because like certainly those people are going to be doing it and it's probably their space. But I think it also depends what community you're from, because if your social circle is people who you know for sure don't know about these issues, they're not educated about these issues, they're not going to be seeing it anywhere, then you kind of have maybe a responsibility to educate them, just like, you know, I used to do with veganism, or I used to do with refugee stuff, or get really involved in debates in university with circles who I thought like didn't share the same opinions as me. So I think it's circumstantial. I don't know if my point was clear.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I think it's actions like, for example, obviously I automatically have a privilege because of my race, because of my background. So I'm middle class, so I'm very comfortable financially. I am a white woman. A woman has its disadvantages, but I'm still in the Western world, so there's a lot of privilege there. So my ways of trying to show up for the conversation is to call out people in my circle when they're saying things that contradict that, or are offensive, or is a cultural appropriation, or so I totally understand what you mean in the sense that it depends what your circumstance is, because if you're in those minorities, then the way that you show up is very different to somebody that's, say, in my position.
Yeah. See, like in my family, like my dad's from Iran, and you know, Iran is not the most loved country in the world, I tell you. So I think like we're all probably like, there's nothing I could say in the conversation that would really like add anything if I'm in a conversation with my family. But that's probably very different to if I'm in a conversation, you know, with I don't know, groups of friends and I don't know, in other circles. So very circumstantial. But there's also something to be said about like, I mean, I used to get so affected by the emotional labor of like trying to take part in discussions that were really going nowhere. Like, I don't know, you could get into a debate with like a Trump voter, or I don't know, like I just was involved in certain groups in university that were working on, you know, refugee rights or Palestinian rights, and there are some conversations where you guys aren't listening to each other. I have like my perspective and it's so far different to the other person's perspective that like there's no the grounds for debate aren't there, because sometimes these Trump voters, for instance, aren't willing to like engage in a proper debate. Sometimes they are, but in that situation, I just learned to really just turn away, because otherwise,
you just have to remove yourself. It's cognitive dissonance, isn't it? It's when they've already made up their mind, so they're not going to even attempt to see the other perspective. They're so tunnel vision with it that you couldn't get through.
And I'm probably the same. Like they probably think that about me too, but I'm just not going to change my mind on certain issues. And I would be willing to hear someone in a different format, like if the debate was kind of like a civilized debate, but not on like on an internet forum with someone who is really just trolling. So something I had to learn: pick your battles.
Pick your battles, choose your fights.
Yeah, exactly. But allyship, you know, I would always ask my friends from that community how they want me to show up for them. That's probably the best thing to do for anyone. Ask your Asian friends or Asian American friends how you can be an ally, and that goes for like every struggle too, every battle.
And what would you say specifically for the refugee movement that I know you're really involved in? How would people be able to help? And just I know it sounds like a really stupid question, because it should be easy to just help, but it's like I said before, it's helping without getting in the way and actually trying to create true change.
It's a really good question. Look, I think for some people, like in countries like the UK, for instance, I think a lot of people just want to meet friends. So I know my friends who were, you know, our age, 20 somethings, were looking to improve their English skills, and they wanted to hang out with other young people and just do normal stuff that young people do. It's obviously very different for like an older person or a family. So I started a Facebook group because I wanted people to connect. It's not super active anymore, but I would love to get it more active. And it was just for people to be like, hey, I'm in Norway, I would love to help someone, you know, deal with their accommodation situation, teach you a little bit Norwegian, I'd love to learn Arabic, or love to hear your story. So that Facebook group, it's called, hang on, let me just pull it up. That Facebook group would be a good way. But actually, that's one of the things that I realized. A lot of people do want to help, you know, refugees, or they do want to be involved, but not everyone can take 2 months off work or school to go to a refugee camp. So that's part of why we wanted to create this app. The group is facebook.com/group/refugee work exchange.
Fabulous. I'll link that in the comments for everyone to have access to so that they can become part of it.
Yeah, we have a few thousand members, and there's a lot of people in there who would just like to meet people from all over the world. And then I think, you know, you can probably find your local charities dealing with this. I know refugees have had a really hard time in some places with COVID, because some of the camps, like Moria camp in Greece and some of the other camps don't even have sanitary facilities, I mean, before COVID. So imagine you have dense populations and stuff. It's been really, really difficult.
I can imagine as well, like you said, the COVID reduces the human connection as well. All of this COVID situation was removed. We'd be able to arrange things like meetup and stuff like that, where we could bring people together and dispel that loneliness and also give them an opportunity to become integrated within society.
Yeah, I think like even Zoom calls, just like having casual conversations for people who want to improve their language skills is really useful and just a bit less lonely. Yeah. And you get to meet some amazing people. I know, I don't know if you remember a few years ago, there was a refugee team in the Olympics.
Yes.
So one of those refugees was Yusra Maidini. And she got refugee status in Germany. And her sister, Sarah, I think, were like heroes, because they were on this boat, and these boats going from Turkey to Greece have, you know, capacity for 30 people, but there's like 70 on board. And the boat capsized or started to sink, and a lot of the people did not know how to swim. And Sarah and her sister Yusra actually swam the boat to shore, like a huge distance, dragging everyone, saved all their lives. And when I was recently in Greece on the Lesbos, an island where there are lots of refugees just 12 kilometers from Turkey, shortly after I left, Sarah was arrested and sentenced for human trafficking, along with an Irish gentleman called Sean, who was working with the Emergency Rescue Centre. And it was a huge case because they had a big, like, no bail, I think, big sentence. And I think now there's been some movement on the case. But yeah, I mean, honestly, amazing people. This is someone who in other circumstances would be getting a medal for the bravery.
Yeah, if it was slightly different circumstances, she would be getting a Nobel Prize, and now she's being sentenced for something that, wow, that's powerful. I don't even know how to respond to that.
Everyone I've introduced to like refugees though, like come back to me and are like, wow, what an amazing person. Thank you for introducing me. So
yeah, and the stories they have to tell, and they're people, they're human beings at the end of the day. And I think that's what's so removed in media coverage and things like that, is that it's very one-sided, and actually we're forgetting that these are human beings that just want a quality of life that we take for granted on daily.
Yeah, and they probably want to go home as soon as they can anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And we need to help facilitate that. Going back to, obviously, so you work for the 1 Billion Project, and you are also part of Crimson Education. I'd love to delve in more on, because you are so young, what it's like to be a woman quite high up in an organisation that is a lot of responsibility and a lot of pressure as a younger individual, and a female at that as well.
So let's start with Crimson. Crimson is really a really amazing company to work for, because it was started by teenagers in 2013.
That's incredible.
And these teenagers are both my friends. One of them is Chandra Kushore, who started the 1 Billion Foundation as well. So I work for both of them. She left Crimson Education, and the other one's Jamie Beaton, who's this another incredible human being. So Crimson was always really young, but I'd kind of considered working for Crimson for a couple of years, and then finally decided to jump on board in 2018. And we're a startup. We're kind of at the tail end of being a startup right now. But back then we were very much still a startup. I think we'd raised like somewhere between 15 and $45 million, but had quite a small team. And I was hired to grow our business in the Middle East. in the UAE. And I remember I had no induction at the time, no training, just kind of a very broad idea of like what we do. And it was just like, okay, off you go.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Hope for the best.
Exactly. That's kind of how it felt. It felt like I was just diving into deep waters. It was a great experience for me because, I was working with a young starting team. So I guess I made a lot of mistakes that I probably wouldn't make now. Just my communication style was different, and they were very forgiving because they were, equally trying to figure all this out.
And it's a learning process, isn't it? Which I think is so important to share, is that we often see people in their finished product, but we don't actually see them in the evolutionary stage where you have to kind of do a bit of back and forth and navigating how to fit into the role, how to fit into a new company, how the teamwork.
Exactly. And to add to that, I was still in New York. I was supposed to be setting up a business in Dubai, and I was having to, and Zoom and Skype didn't work at the time in the UAE, like at all. So imagine trying to communicate with like clients and stuff. Yeah, exactly. It was like impossible. So I had to fly to Dubai like every couple of months, and it would be like finishing class on Thursday night, going on the airport, flying 18 hours or 17 hours to Dubai, landing in the morning, going to work intensively, like 15-hour days for 3 days, and then flying back and going straight from the airport to class on Monday. It was like an exhausting period of my life.
Imagine, blimey.
Yeah, but it was worth it. I built something good, and we ended up building one of the fastest growing markets in the company at the time. And then when I graduated, I moved to the UAE to grow our operations fully. And I'm now overseeing the Middle East and Africa and Turkey for Crimson.
Wow.
It's been quite interesting because I would say UAE is very progressive when it comes to female penetration in the workforce. But still you have, all over the world, a lot of resistance to fight, like just people assuming that when I go to a meeting with, someone who works for me, that I'm the intern.
Just because you're younger and you're the female.
Yeah, exactly. And I was really careful about looking professional all the time and just trying to compensate for my age, because I felt like people always assumed that I wasn't the person to talk to about important decisions. And I also had some experiences, actually with women, which was quite painful to me, but I know is not uncommon. And I know it's because there's this sense that if there are female executives in the business place, that you're competing for coveted spots.
It's this deeply embedded kind of competitiveness and a constant fight. And it's almost like, I hate to be all feminazi about it, but I feel like it's put there for a reason, because if we spend more time competing with each other than actually working together to build all women higher up the workforce, then actually we'd be a bigger force to reckon with. Whereas because we're spending too much time competing with each other for those such finite positions within businesses, that actually we're belittling each other and knocking each other down when we think that that's helping us, when actually in the long run it's just fighting against everyone's progression, really.
Totally true. And I'm lucky because Crimson is a very female, heavy organization in terms of the leadership team and the kind of support, and it's super progressive. We have women at Crimson group. We have kind of a lot of talks and seminars on important issues, and it's really a progressive environment. But at the time, I was hiring for the first time ever, and I made some really key mistakes. At one point I hired someone who just looked great on paper, but she was older than me. And I just was so excited to hire her. And I was doing my training from New York while she was in Dubai. I'd set out a training plan. It was great. And we'd gone above and beyond to be nice to this person. I had let her, my mom had offered for her to live in our house for 2 weeks without paying rent until she got on her feet. We just were so accommodating to her.
Yeah.
And on her first day, because I WhatsApped her, which was kind of, how we communicate a lot on WhatsApp. We're a startup. It's really casual and not formal and kind of stuffy. And she told me I had an unsophisticated communication style because I was messaging her on WhatsApp on her first day. And I was like, that's really uncomfortable, but let me give her the benefit of the doubt. I was like, okay, it's clear that we need to, sort something out. We've gone off on the wrong foot. Let's let's try and start again. Let's try and start over. And she was like, I think I've just realized that what the problem is. I think you're threatened because I'm older than you, more experienced, and, you know, I'm more deserving of your job. And I was like,
oh dear.
All right. I'm not insecure about that.
It's not your insecurity, it's her insecurity being projected onto you.
Exactly. And I was like, this was the moment where I decided to stop taking offense, because it was so ridiculous that someone was doing this on their first day.
The first day as well. Wow. I thought this would be like later down the line, not straight in, by the way. What?
We had my boss organize like a kind of disciplinary meeting to try and sort things out, because he couldn't, like, he rightly couldn't believe what I was saying was true. Like, he was like, no way someone's that stupid, to be honest. And during that disciplinary meeting, she asked when she could expect a raise. And he was like, let's just get through this meeting first. I had that mistake, and it was a brilliant lesson, because the next time I hired people, I just was very straight up about it. I was like, I'm younger than you. Is that a problem?
Good for you, though, because I think there's so much stigma there that just because you're younger, you don't know your profession. But like we've discussed earlier, you've been very involved in a lot of areas of your expertise from a very young age. You are an expert in your field, and you don't have to justify that because you haven't got years on your back.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, like, definitely I always tried to hire older people who had experience in areas that I didn't have, to complement me, but I just wasn't willing to accept that kind of ageism. And I think, like I mentioned to you, we normally talk about ageism as something affecting, you know, older employees. And every time I listen to, you know, Harvard Business Review, Women at Work, or any of these podcasts, it really focused on that part of ageism. And I didn't really ever see any resources to help young people in these positions. And so I'd ask that question, and then I'd also ask a question which was, describe your ideal manager. And this was a little bit harsh, maybe some would say, but if their normative ideal manager was a he, they were just like off the list.
Yeah, agreed. I'm the opposite. I'm a freelancer, so I'm an actress, like that's my main profession. But then to supplement that, because it's not very consistent, I do freelance social media management, content creation, writing, etc. And I find I actually gravitate towards female-run businesses, because I just know they work better. They're just way more accommodating. I love women. I love working with women. I feel more inspired by them. So I'm actually the opposite in that sense, where I'm like, oh, the like, not that I'm being sexist towards men, but I just know that I work better in a female orientated environment.
Of course, yeah. No, it means something about it. Like, if you look, I mean, there's the classic comparison of Tinder and Bumble, like not only as companies on the consumer end, although one can make the comparison there too, but also apparently the work culture is just like so different.
Yeah. There's a really interesting interview with, I think it's Louise Duran. I think she was the one of the big creators within Bumble, and basically helping it leverage to what it was. But she spoke about the working environment there. I'll have to think of it off the top of my head, but I think she did an interview with a blogger called Anoni that was really interesting to hear about. So I'll have to let you know, because that's a really...
I love how I built this interview with Bumble, because the founder did used to work at Tinder, right? And she actually dated the other co-founder.
Yeah, which is... it's such a like interesting kind of weaving of scenarios. And then as a female, I would be more likely to use Bumble than Tinder, like from a dating perspective, because it feels more accessible to me as a woman. Yeah, but actually, like, fun fact, I actually met my boyfriend on Hinge, which is an entirely different app.
Oh, nice. Where did you go? Oh, yeah, and you guys went to the Indian restaurant.
Yeah, we went for coffee on the first date, but yeah, we went to Dishoom later down the line. But yeah, entirely different app. I don't actually know much about the founders of that, but I know quite a lot of my friends do enjoy Bumble over Tinder. Depends what you're looking for, I guess.
But I've heard the same thing from my friends. Haven't been on the apps. Obviously being engaged
kind of stops your app habits. I know that you like to travel a lot. You're exactly like me. You're a woman, free spirit. Where has been your favorite places to travel?
Oh my goodness, that's really hard. So before I went to university, I took the best decision of my life. No, sorry. I just said I'm getting married. I shouldn't say this was the best decision of my life. I took a really good decision to take a gap year.
Yeah, I support the gap year. I love it. I think it's the most transformational process.
Did you do it as well?
Yeah, I did. So I took it in between my 2 years of college, and I backpacked pretty much most of Asia. So I did Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, Philippines, all of that. And it's probably one of the most transformative processes I ever did in my life, just to remove myself at a time when there is the most pressure. Because in the UK, I don't know if it's the same in Dubai, but
yeah, I did A-level.
A-levels, everything's madness. What are you going to do with the rest of your life? And if you don't do this, then you fail. And I wanted to be a performer, but my college was very adamant that they wanted me to go to Oxbridge. And I had lots of like health issues and things at the time. So it was just felt the need to remove myself and actually figure out where I fit into this crazy world that I was going into. So yeah, I just think travel is the most incredible thing, to put yourself headfirst into different cultures and just live and actually be, rather than ticking things off all the time.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I felt like I also, I went to school in the British system. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was interested in a lot of stuff. I was looking at economics, international relations, political science, and I found it crazy that I had to make this decision. And I think like most of us haven't ever really figured out who we are outside of our families, and as you probably know, like families are often your original triggers. Like all the things you're triggered by often start in your childhood or in your family life. For everyone, it's normal. So I think like it can be really useful to have an experience living in a place where you don't know anyone. So I chose places where I didn't know anyone, didn't speak the language. I love languages, so I was always trying to study the languages. And to just explore like the side of you that isn't like Soraya the daughter or Chelsea the sister or whatever. So I did au pair work in Italy, which I loved, and I studied Italian.
The Italian language is, I learned a bit of it at school, and I wish we'd started it at an earlier age, because it feels so musical to me. Like it feels almost like singing, and I just love it. And I've actually never
beautiful,
been
but
to Italy.
You don't use it, like you can't use it outside of Italy. Like if you speak
That's
French,
the downside,
you can speak in Africa. Yeah, you can speak in the Middle East, but Italy is pretty much just, it's just Italy. But it's beautiful. You should definitely visit it.
Yeah, I'm going, hopefully, travel dependent, I'm going to Rome with one of my best friends in September, and I'm so excited because I'm a history nerd, so I want to do all of that stuff. Obviously, Rome is just a beautiful city. The food, the wine, I'm ready.
Pizza. I went on one trip to Italy when I was a child. Like it was like a big family holiday. And my parents told me that because I was about 5 or 6, I would only eat pasta with butter, pasta with pesto, or Indian food. Like there was
she
a butter
knows what she wants
in Milan. Yeah, I took one look at lasagna and I was like, I'm not eating that.
Like, what is that?
Yeah, did eat a lot of pizza, I think, though. So yeah, I love Italy, and my dad grew up in Italy, and so I did my au pairing there, and I'd done au pairing there with the same family for a couple of years in high school. Yeah, and it was just lovely. And I did like some volunteer stuff in education as well, in Vietnam, your classic gap year.
Yeah, I know. I was such a cliche. I hate myself for it, but
I know, but you just try. I mean, at least we filled it with good stuff. And I took the 40-hour bus from across Vietnam, which was quite an experience.
Fun.
And then I did an internship at the Hermitage Museum in Russia. So at that point, my main interest was art history, and I'd done art history in A-levels, classical studies, history, and art. And I really thought I was going to be applying it, getting a career in that field. So I worked at the Hermitage, and St. Petersburg was one of my favorite places in the world. It was truly like an incredible experience, because Russia to me was just something I learned about in history, and I love the literature, as I mentioned.
Yeah, the literature is so powerful.
Yeah, just, oh my God, Master and Margarita is my favorite book of all time.
Don't even. I was really lucky to do a recreation of that as a play, and it's one of the best things I've ever been in, and I love the book. I'm annoyed because I don't actually have it here. It's in London, but the Master and Margarita is one I could read it over and over again.
So if you like that, you should read the short story that I just finished called The Double, because it has that same, like Master and Margarita is just like ludicrous, like it's just ridiculous.
Literally.
And it's insane. So The Double kind of has that kind of language. I like these Russian writers have this incredible ability to write in a way that's both like super mundane and ordinary, but like very absurd.
Yeah, it's like absolute chaos, but then it's
deadpan.
It is, yeah. It's crazy, but I love it. As if you've mentioned that, yeah, it's one of my favorite books.
Yeah, wow. So yeah, I was working at the Hermitage Museum there. And then I worked in DIFC in the financial center in Dubai with the PR relations firm, and I was specifically working with their art clients too. So what was the question? Oh, favorite places
to travel. This is the thing. It's like, it's one of those you end up on like little segues, but I love it.
Yeah, St. Petersburg, definitely one of the most magical places in the entire world. I mean, you have the White Nights. I highly recommend it. I don't know if you've ever been there.
I've not been, but it's on my list. I want to do 30 countries before I'm 30, if I can, is the plan. I think I'm on like 21 at the moment, so I'm not far off, but obviously the past year has put a huge dent in my tick list. The weird thing is I've done so much of the Asian sector. I've actually not done that much of Europe.
Easy.
Yeah, which is so close and so easy to get to. So I really need to start ticking some off.
Yeah, and then you can easily do 9 in like 3 weeks.
Yeah, literally.
So, but St. Petersburg is like absolutely magical because I went there. I was really like you going through that like really low key backpacking phase. So I had an apartment that was like awful. I really loved it, but like it was crazy because it was kind of in a good location, which is what mattered to me. But I was living. I rented a room from this girl, and the other roommate was like this like kind of a weirdo. He was a DJ and he was kind of like a vampire. I never saw him out in the light. And the house itself had no electricity except for in the bedrooms. It had no lights. The wooden floors had been ripped out, so it was like dirt and concrete. But the room was comfortable, like just the room that I stayed in. So when my mom came to visit, she was like, "What are you living in?" So I just chose the cheapest thing that I could in the right area. Then I noticed, like, you know, in Russia, in St. Petersburg, you had like all of the artists and poets and creative people from that entire like part of Europe. That's where they moved to. That was like, you know, the equivalent of New York for the Americas. So it was amazing to see, you know, tons of jazz bars, musicians on the street, like professional poets, just kind of like living their best lives in this romantic, gorgeous St. Petersburg.
I love it. And I think creatives thrive off that backdrop as well. To have New York's always been a dream for me. I went there for my 21st, very cliche again, but I just am so fascinated with the city because it's so big and exciting. But I can imagine that St. Petersburg would have the same effect, but in a more kind of magical Narnia way.
Especially for us, because it's just different. It's like a different world. Yeah, New York is special. I think there's really, I mean, people say it, but I really think there's no city in the world that's like New York.
Yeah, and it's so, I feel like you turn down a different street and it's completely different. There's always something going on. There's kind of one of the reasons why I love London, in the sense that it's always busy and there's always something exciting, and you never know, like you'll turn around the corner and you don't actually know what's going to be there, kind of thing. But New York does London, but on a whole other level.
It's just very accepting. Like it opened me up so much because like, it's not like I had a conservative upbringing. I mean, my family were like very unorthodox in some ways. And I had exposure to lots of characters, and like our family were always doing different things. I had a cousin who's a costume designer and worked on Lord of the Rings, and my mom's interior designer, dad's a filmmaker. So lots of creatives. But even so, I realized you could just be literally anyone in the world and you'll find like not even a friend, but a whole community of people in New York who are like just like you.
Yeah. That
no
are
matter
also like
what that interest was.
It's the open-heartedness of, here we are, come join us, we're your people.
Yeah, it was really accepting. Nice place.
I love that. Would you say St. Petersburg is your favorite place?
It's really hard to choose.
I know. To be fair, that's a difficult question.
Yeah, I just think everywhere in the world has so much beauty. Like, depends on like if you have an open mind and you're willing to like bend your ideas of like what beautiful is. Like some people just like holidays where they're just on the beach, and you know, Seychelles and Maldives is like for them, and some people like, you know, the kind of European cultural historical holidays. But for me, I'm like my dad in that way. I just like, I'm going to be fascinated anywhere.
And I always want to, I don't know about you, but I want to submerge myself like fully into that environment. So when I was in the Philippines, I didn't do any of the tourist in inverted commas stuff. I stayed in a tree house that had 4 hours of electricity a day. No one spoke any English. I knew like basic Filipino. I was with a friend that spoke Filipino, but not really the dialect that they spoke. So we kind of had to articulate through gestures and like basic loose English. They'd never seen an iPhone before. They'd never seen a white person before. Like, it was so removed from the world I was in, but it was the most sensational experience. I was literally in the middle of nowhere in oceans that were crystal clear, and yeah, it was incredible. I literally slept on like a mattress with a net around it and was completely removed.
I've always wanted to see the Philippines. It looks gorgeous.
Oh yeah, just 100% recommend. Go do it. Wow.
I had a similar experience in Vietnam because I was living with 3 flatmates who were teachers, and like one of them, she didn't speak English. I was trying to learn Vietnamese, but like
it's
pretty poor at it. Yeah, it was not very good. And so we kind of developed a like friendship through communication, like gestures, as you've just mentioned. And at one point, she really wanted to take me to her home village, and so I just was like, "Yeah, cool, let's go." And we drove for 3 hours on a motorbike. Her friend's wedding was there, and like it was like very, very, very remote, but such a fun experience because they were just so welcoming and so open. You know, I ended up sharing a bed with her and her mum, and they were like, yeah, it was like the most remote experience I've ever had, in terms of just like the distance from any kind of city or anything like that. But they were still so warm and welcoming, and no one could communicate with me, but I had such a fun time.
It's so funny, isn't it? Because we think that a lot of the time language is dictated as a barrier, but actually, like we've said before, there's so much more like universal languages, like food, love.
And you're a dancer. Dance as well.
Dance and music is such a unifier. It brings people together. I love it. I think that's one of the reasons why I love what I do, is because no matter like who you are, where you come from, what your opinions are, the creative sector brings people together. People love music, people love movement, people love films, sport, books. There's so many unifying sectors, which I just love.
How have you found it being a creative, at this time?
It's been very up and down for me. I've been very fortunate in that, well, I say fortunate, I hustle hard and I work hard for my craft, and I've had opportunities like within the lockdown which have enabled me to kind of keep going and re-inspire myself, and I've done workshops and listened to a lot of podcasts, but I also took some time out, which I think was really important, because I think you get so on the kind of audition hustle train, and then you kind of get knocked back, and it just wears you down. And I think if anything, a lot of creatives just needed a break to step back from it all and go, okay, I do actually love what I do. It isn't just for a job. It isn't just to earn money. Like, I do love being creative, and it's part of my soul, not just a way to pay the rent. So I think it gave me that perspective, but then so I needed the break, but then it also gave me the kick up the arse to kind of go back to my own creative projects that I put on the back burner all the time and make excuses about. So like this podcast, been wanting to do this for like the better part of 2.5 years, and I've just not done it. I like pushing myself with like planning a non-fiction book and other things that I wanted to do for me rather than for the title of actress, performer, creative, whatever.
Such a nice thing that I think a lot of people have experienced, among many serious difficulties in COVID, was like finally having the time and the lack of excuses to do the things they want to do.
Yeah, and the space, and to actually realise, that's why so many people are changing careers and so many people are leaving relationships and changing where they live, or because they've actually gone, am I happy in the situation I am in, where I've just been, because everyone's so like go, they don't actually stop and go, okay, am I happy where I am?
So true. I've heard of like people taking like relationship summits and stuff where you just like take time to take stock and like plan the year ahead, because we do it for business. I've been thinking a lot about how like we put so much thought into the person we choose as our life partner, if that's the direction we're going in, and it becomes like one of the biggest decisions of your life, and you kind of think about it for like your entire teenage years. But you actually spend way more time than with your colleagues, and that's kind of crazy to me, that we spend the majority of our time at work. And I love my job, but I do think there's something imbalanced in our like social system, and I think, I don't know, maybe we'll see a 3-day weekend, or we'll see people working just for 5 or 6 hours a day instead of 8.
And having the ability to be able to work from home as well, and to not be so separated and removed, because it's so true. They say that you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with, and it's interesting because if you actually think about who you spend the most time with, like you said, it'll be people at work. Do you like everyone you work with? Probably not. Would you choose the people, like if you, like in London it's a lot of shared housing, would you choose the people that you live with in your house? Probably not. So it's such an interesting perspective actually, to think, oh okay, this is the person that my human, they're my lobster for the rest of my life, but actually I probably see them less than the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Exactly. And it's not even your best hours either. Like if you have a 9 to 5 and you come home, or like, to be honest, it's not even really a 9 to 5. Like most people I know will finish work at 7 or 8. You come home, you spend your 1.5 hours of quality time with your family, and you're exhausted. Like it's I've heard Esther Perel, she always talks about it. It's you bring the leftovers home.
Wow, that I actually really like that analogy, because that is literally it. You're not going in there with freshly cooked. Going back to the food analogy, you've not served a freshly cooked meal on the table. You've got the leftover bits and bobs in a plastic Tupperware that dishing out to the people, that are meant to be the most important people in your life. It's just mental.
Yeah, so I hope that we rethink one of these systems again. Like with Crimson, we've always been pretty remote, so I used to always have to explain that to people, and like they just didn't get it. And then with COVID, they were like, oh, I finally get it, like you work remotely. Well, you've inspired me. I really want to write my poetry book.
Do it.
And I think you've inspired me.
It's one of those things where I genuinely believe with anything, if you want to do it enough, it will happen, but there's normally like something that will change that will give you the impetus to make it happen. So with my poetry book, I was writing it through my 3 years of drama school. I didn't really have much confidence when I was there, and I didn't have the impetus to release it because I was too scared of being judged, and I wanted it to be perfect, and I wanted it to be published by the biggest publishing house and all of this, when actually all I wanted was to share my work. That was all it mattered. And in the end, I left and graduated. 2 months later, I was like, fuck it, I'm going to self-publish. I'm going to make this happen and see what people want. And I sold hundreds.
Brilliant response.
Yeah, I sold hundreds of copies. I did a book launch in the centre of London with Sweaty Betty, which are a huge fitness brand. And I would have never have seen that coming. And that was just because I loved what I did and I shared it in my authentic way. And yeah, I think no one should say no because of oh, I don't have the money, or I don't have the advertising, or it should just be about putting your stuff out for the world to see.
It is hard though, because there's you're someone I think of as so genuine on social media, but there's so many people, and people I guess I should just stop following them. I have stopped followed a lot of them.
I know, it's a trap, isn't it?
Who just are selling you stuff all the time, and they're selling and selling and selling, and then every time I notice a lot of people talk about changes that they've made, with their diets or whatever, and they speak with so much conviction, but they also spoke with conviction before, and now they'll be talking about how they feel so much better and they were feeling so bloated and crappy months ago, but months ago you look back on and they were actually talking about how amazing they were feeling, and each time they were trying to sell you something different.
Yeah, and it's I don't know when to believe you, because your argument always feels so convincing, there's no truth there anymore. And I think that's why there's that thing, it's a quote that comes around all the time, about how everyone's so quick to repost something a celebrity's posted that they're selling. Say the Kardashians are releasing a new perfume, everyone will repost it, everyone will share it, but your friend has written a book and wants you to share it, or has started a small business and no one shares it. And it's we're bombarded with selling all the time, that when it comes to the people we actually know, we don't have the...
I know. Yeah, it's tough. Support small businesses, folks.
Yeah, that's definitely what I've taken into 2020, 2021, was trying to hone in.
I saw, I think she used to be called Rican Vegana. She's now I am Yvonne Rivera, and she started her business selling spices and selling cookbooks and really cool stuff. And she posted a meme that was buy from your friend and don't ask them to give you their product for free. Buy from your small business owner. And that it's obvious, but it really hit me. It's we should definitely not expect free stuff from our friend who's trying to start a small business. Buy the thing.
Yeah, because you wouldn't contact Amazon and say, can you send me my item for free? You just know you have.
Amazon could.
That's the worst of it. It's the smaller businesses are the ones that need you to give them the attention, yet everyone's more mindful of it. So it's madness, but yeah, a weird world we live in. But to end on a thought piece, I'm asking everyone, what is one thing you wish you were taught in school? It's a really difficult one. Or you could say one thing you wish you knew heading into your 20s.
Well, I tell you one thing that I don't, the one thing that I'm not excited that I learned is like how to figure out the volume of a sphere, or how to figure out like the volume of a prism. I'm so glad I learned that in school, instead of like how to invest in stocks, or how to like cultivate mindfulness. Maybe like mindful, like I think schools should probably have mindfulness programs. And like I know, because my fiance went to school in the French system and they learn like philosophy. And I was just telling him how one of the most amazing people in my educational life in school was a guy who he started the philosophy club at school, and he was a teacher. He used to be a Catholic priest and left the church after his daughter died. He ended up going back to the Church of England, so not Catholicism, but then he started the philosophy club at our school. And like that was the first time I ever got exposed to learning like how to think about arguments, or how to debate using like defined concepts, or defined like logical prescriptions, how to like properly debate ideas, learning how to, how people tried to prove the existence of God. So I think like more philosophy and spirituality and tools, or like non-biased ways of thinking about like the diversity of ideas in the world, different religions and so forth.
I love that, and I think that's so prevalent right now as well, because a lot of the time we're arguing from opinions that we're trying to disguise as fact, when actually they're not. It's just an opinion that's based on your own bias. So I think actually if we would be exposed from a younger age to a diverse plethora of opinions, rather than just a tunnel vision perspective that we're given, then actually it would make us better at arguing a point, better at researching, better at understanding,
and better at changing our own minds too. Just like if we value the idea of debate, and we know how to debate fairly, and we know how to be open-minded, then I think like we would just have a lot less polarity in the world. So I think I would have liked more of that.
I love that, and what a bang to end on. Hopefully I will actually get to meet you in person at some point to live out our vegan food travel girly fantasy. I might just have to make the trip to Dubai. I'll turn up on a camel. If you want to tell everyone where to find you, any up and coming projects that they need to keep an eye out for, this is your time to self-plug.
So at Soraya.Beheshti on Instagram, not an easy one to spell, so I'm sure you're going to put the link in the show notes.
All the links will be in.
I can put the Refugee Work Exchange, and then I guess since now I'm motivated to publish my poetry book, I will. I was publishing on Instagram under a false name, which was Scheherazade Poetry. I'll send you the link to that one as well.
Please do. I'm excited to read your stuff. I've just had the best time talking to you. I think you're just such an inspiring and incredible woman, and you really are paving the way in so many different sectors.
It's been a real joy. Like, I've really enjoyed speaking with you. Thank you for having me.